Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. Today we are going to talk about a product from Axio software called MadeToPrint, and more specifically MadeToPrint for QuarkXPress. Part of this will be a presentation, part of it will be a demonstration of the actual product inside of QuarkXPress. What is it that we are going to talk about? You can see the agenda on your screen. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what MadeToPrint actually is, what different versions exists. In between we'll have a little bit of demo of the actual product, but I put a lot of information in the presentation itself so that you have something to reference afterwards. And then some pointers on where you can get more information and trial versions and so on. So first of all, let's talk about MadeToPrint. MadeToPrint is a software application that makes it possible to standardize and automate output. It integrates with a number of creative applications, QuarkXPress, of course, and that's what we are talking about today. For Quark, it goes from version 7 through the latest version, actually version 2016. It also integrates into Adobe InDesign, Illustrator, InCopy, and it can provide very precise output. And that's the standardization part, of course. It allows you to define exactly what type of output you want from an application, and then it will always generate that particular type of output, avoiding errors and making the whole process less error-prone. Standardized how? Well, the basic concept in MadeToPrint is what is called an output setting. And an output setting is used to generate output from QuarkXPress, and that output setting always generates one particular type of output, and of course it controls all of the different things you need to control in QuarkXPress to generate exactly that type of output consistently. So you set this up once and you provide a lot of details in that output setting, and that includes things like making sure that all images and links are up to date, telling MadeToPrint what the requested file format is you want, what options for that file format you want, where the output should go, pre and post processing steps. So all of that information is defined once in that output setting, and then that output setting can be used to generate output. So let's look at this in a little bit more detail here. What you basically can see is that in such an output setting, I have a list of things that I can define. In the screen that you see in front of you, on the left-hand side, you have all of the output settings that were defined. In the middle, you have the properties for such an output setting. In this case, the high-res PDFX4 output setting that I've selected. And on the right-hand side, you have the particular set of properties that we're looking at. In this case, the general properties of this output setting that include the name, whether it's active or not, locked or not. You can assign a priority to it, a comment, and so on. Of course, it becomes more interesting when we look at what type of output this setting is going to generate, and the first step in there is to define what output format we want. And what I did here was select PDF, and then you can see a QuarkXPress print style, in this case the PDFX4 print style, and I could include a page range if I wanted to. And once I select that PDF file format, some of these settings that I have for that output setting will be activated or deactivated. In that list you have in the middle, you can see the ones with a little black check mark in front of them. Those are the ones that I'm using now. Some of those categories I cannot define. or cannot use. For example, info bar is only available when I'm generating PostScript output. Others I can, and I can see here which of those are switched on and switched off. And I want to briefly go over these different values that I have here. I'll come back to some of them in a little bit more detail when I actually show you the application. But let's run over some of the most important ones for such an output setting. And the second one is file name and output location. That's what you see here. This looks very complex, but basically what you're defining here is at the top of this dialog, you're defining which folder your output is going to be generated in. And there is a system of tokens or variables that you can use, and I will show you in a little bit more detail later in the demo how you do that. And then there is a setting for the file name that you're using as well. And here again, you can use these variables, but I can also have fixed parts as a suffix or a prefix or in between. So I can build exactly what I want in terms of output file name, which means that if in your company you're using file naming conventions later on to automate things, that MadeToPrint can follow those file name conventions every time without error. And that's a huge help when you're trying to do something automated, of course. So that's the location and the file name. I can then further define whether I want single page output or I want to generate spreads from MadeToPrint. I can define which layers I want to generate in the output or which layers I want to use in the output. And what I've done here, or what I can do here, for example, is a layer combination. But I'll go in a little bit more detail in the demo as well. Then I want to highlight the pre-flight category, and there I can say that any links that I have in my QuarkXPress document that need to be updated should be updated. And I can also specify a folder where missing images can be found, and that can be in the folder of the QuarkXPress document itself. It can be in the parent folder of that QuarkXPress document, or it can be somewhere completely different. If all of the images are stored on a central server, for example, then I could specify that location in the folder, and then MadeToPrint would make QuarkXPress look for those images in that folder, update them automatically, and then generate output. At the bottom of this window, you can also see what happens if something is missing. So if I'm trying to update an image and that image cannot be found in the location that I specify here, then I can choose what needs to happen, whether an error is generated, a report needs to be generated, whether the document is generated anyway. I have different options on how to handle those error situations. MadeToPrint also allows you, in the case of PDF export, to post-process that PDF document that was generated. And that can be very useful as well in many situations. The way that is done is by running profiles from PDF Toolbox from Callus Software, which is a sister company to XIO Software. And those profiles can further optimize or modify the PDF document. You don't need to have a license for PDF Toolbox separately. The PDF Toolbox engine is actually integrated into MadeToPrint for QuarkXPress. So basically, if you have a profile that you've created in PDF Toolbox or you've created in Acrobat Professional, then you can specify that profile here, and that can do further corrections on your PDF document. As an example, I have an output setting here which generates PDFX4, and in my post-processing step, I've selected a Gantt workgroup profile that is also built on PDFX4, but that adds additional pre-flag checks and corrections. So in this way, the file that is generated will automatically be optimized further to be Gantt workgroup compliant. But of course, you can do many more things with PDF Toolbox. Another good example would be to create a profile that converts everything to grayscale, and that would allow you to make a made-to-print output setting that automatically creates grayscale, fully grayscale documents, even from a QuarkXPress document that contains color or color images and so on. The last step I think that I wanted to mention here is that that built-in Callas engine is not only used for running these pre-flight profiles or optimization profiles, but that Callas engine can also do imposition. In PDF Toolbox, you can define imposition layouts, and there are a number of default layouts that you have, but then you can build your own as well. And these layouts can be used to do imposition tasks. And that means that you could output a booklet from MadeToPrint, for example, and then run a imposition layout that will put that booklet into the correct imposed PDF, and then you have a finished PDF that could be sent to output immediately. So that is also available. You just have to switch it on, the little checkbox that you have at the top there, select the imposition configuration that you want to use, and out comes an imposed PDF document. Okay, so let me, before I go to the next slide here, let me go to QuarkXPress and show you how this would actually work in real life. So I've launched QuarkXPress 2016. Here I have a document open, and then when I go to File and I go to MadeToPrint, the MadeToPrint panel in QuarkXPress is opened. And what you can see is that I have two versions here at the top, standard or auto, and I will go into more detail about auto when we talk about automation. What we're working with right now is a standard version, and then you see this list of output settings. That's what we've been looking at so far. And when at the bottom I use print, then I will generate output with that particular output setting. And I will do that in a second. When I do edit, I will look at the settings. Before we look at the settings, let me go to print and create output from here. So all of the settings that we've defined in that output setting will now be used to generate a PDF document from QuarkXPress. And let me show you what happens in that case. I actually need my output folder, so MadeToPrint. I've defined an output folder here, and as you can see, I have subfolders in there for the date. In there, I have a subfolder that has a 4-letter name, and we'll come back to where that comes from in the output setting details. And under there, I have something that has the file name of my QuarkXPress document, and then has a suffix that was generated automatically. Okay. Let me come back here and go back to MadeToPrint. And I'm actually not sure, Karina, whether I can zoom in on this. I'm sorry, I have a relatively big monitor. And I don't think I can make this bigger at the moment. What you have here is, so let me select the output setting that we just used. This is what I've explained during the presentation. We have the name for this output setting. It is set to active, so I can use it. I have a priority that I can set. I could give it a description, but of course, like I said, the most important part is where I define what I want, and there I can choose between PDF, VPS, PostScript, or collect for output. So different things that I can select. And then when I select PDF, I get print styles that I can select. So anything that you have defined as print style in QuarkXPress will be available in there. I could define a page range. And then I need to define where to generate that output. And you've seen in my output folder that the output in this case was generated in a subfolder of that folder. And why is that? Well, that is because here in my destination folder, I have built an expression that creates subfolders. So I have this fixed output folder. That's the first part in there. And then after that, and let me make sure that the whole preview setting here is visible. So I have a fixed part to here, and then after that I have started to use these tokens. And each of these tokens is replaced on the fly each time you create output from MadeToPrint is replaced on the fly with an actual value. The first token I use is a date. I have a format in there that will basically generate the full year, and then the month, and then the day. And then the second token I use here will take the document name, but it will only take the 4 left characters, left side characters of that document name. My document is called Penguins Forever, and so the 4 first letters are PENG. That is that subfolder that was created in my output. So I get the date first, and then the subfolder in there called PENG. Every day, if I would run this tomorrow, I would get a subfolder with the date of tomorrow, but again with that subfolder in there. And because of these tokens that you can specify, not just in the location, but also in the file name itself, you can really build quite complex naming conventions or folder naming conventions, and you can be sure that the output will always be done correctly to those locations. How do you know which tokens to use and what the format is and so on? Well, I can show that quite easily. Let me use the file name as an example. First of all, as soon as I type something, I will add an underscore to the beginning of the file name. As soon as I do that, that is previewed in the preview box here at the bottom. So I don't have to guess. I know exactly what is going on. And then secondly, I can insert these tokens by selecting them from a list. So I could say I want the date, and that shows me what is going to happen here. If I do something that is wrong, I will immediately get the indication that there is an error in this token that I'm using. So now it goes back to the correct statement. If I want to know, for example, what options I can use in here, I go to the documentation section and select date, and then this will give me the options that I can use and some examples as well. If I want to use one of those, I can simply copy paste between the documentation section and the file name, for example, and that gives me a preview then of what is going to be generated. So it's quite easy to use these tokens. You can see the full list of tokens by going through this. Some of these have to do with dates and file names and document names and the path of the document. You can also ask the user to enter information. For example, if I know that there is a job ID that needs to be added into the document name, for example, then I could use this ask integer token. If you look for the documentation, it will tell you exactly what you can do with that. And this will bring up a dialog during the output. And in that dialog, the user will now be able to specify a particular a number, and that number will then be used in the name of the file. So it's a quite flexible system that allows you to modify or determine exactly what the file name is going to be, or the final folder is going to be for this output setting. This is pretty straightforward, pages or spreads. Then I have the layer capabilities, and I said that I was going to show you the options. So what I can do here is the default, which is all visible and printable layers, or I can say all layers in the document. I can print visible layers separately for this document. And that means that if I have 5 layers in my QuarkXPress file, I will get 5 separate output documents every time I use this output setting. And I can use the name of the layer in the name of the file name or in the folder definition. There is a token to work with that, which means that again I can build a pretty powerful output setting if I'm using these layers in my QuarkXPress files. Print every layer separately, so the difference here is that also invisible layers will be output, and then I can build layer combinations, and these layer combinations can include fixed layers and then layers per document. So fixed layers would mean layers that are specific or that are common to all the outputs. Per document would be layers that are causing a separate document to be output. So I can set that up. If I'm working with PostScript export, I can include an info bar and then build here what needs to be in there. The same with the print job name. If I'm using a printer, then I can determine what the name of the print job is going to be. And if I'm generating PostScript output, I can output individual PostScript fragments. Let me see if I switch this to PostScript, for example. I can set up individual PostScript fragments to be used at different locations in the output stream. And that, again, I can, of course, use to modify what exactly is going to be generated as a output document. Then I have that pre-flight section. I'm going to take this back to PDF. I have this pre-flight section where I specify how images should be updated and so on. We talked about post-processing, where if I activate it, I can select a profile, and Manage Profiles opens up the folder where those profiles live. And I can now take a profile that was built in PDF Toolbox or in Adobe Acrobat Professional and move that in here, and then it will be recognized by MadeToPrint, and I can use that. I can generate a report in case of an error, so that I know why I got no output file, for example, or what the actual problem is. I can also use the built-in imposition engine by selecting the imposition layout that I want. And the same thing here. I have a folder where I have these imposition layouts. And if I build my own imposition layouts in PDF Toolbox desktop, you can do that. Then this will allow me to simply drop them into this folder and then use them in my MadeToPrint setting. And if all of these things are not sufficient, I can also have pre and post scripts or applications that will be run before the output and after the output. So in this case, if I specify something here, which may be an Apple script, if you're running this on a Mac, or it may be a command script or something like that, an application, then this will be run before the actual output, and these will be run after the actual output. So this could be further used to integrate MadeToPrint into a larger workflow. Then I have, there was one other thing I wanted to show, I think. Also, I skipped this one in the beginning. So if you're using, if you're generating PostScript, you can also activate distiller, and then PostScript will be generated, and it will be distilled into a PDF document automatically with specific settings. So really a lot of different settings that you can use to build exactly the output that you want. And of course, like I said before, I'm not limited to one. Here I already have 2 different output settings, and each of these output settings generates one particular type of output. High-res PDF from the first one, EPS files from the second output setting I have here in that example. Okay, let me close this for the moment and go back here, and then we'll go back to our presentation for a second. So of course it's nice to build these output settings, and you've seen that there is a lot of flexibility and power in there. But you can also easily understand that in many cases, I want to generate multiple output files from a QuarkXPress job. I build my QuarkXPress file, and then I might need a low-res PDF version and a high-res PDF version, or I might need a black and white preview of the file, or I might need EPS for one part of the workflow and PDF for another part of the workflow. I might want to collect everything for output and send it to someone or archive it. So in many cases, you want to run different things. You want to generate multiple pieces of output, and it would be very annoying if you have to manually generate these and then wait for all of that to happen. The better solution in MadeToPrint is to build an output set, and one of those sets is a group of output settings. So an output set contains multiple output settings, and all of them will be used. If I print an output set or generate output from an output set, then automatically all of the different output settings in there are going to be generated. How does that work? It's very, very straightforward. I have an output set. In that output set, I have also general properties like a name and a priority and so on. But then the main part is the referenced print settings that I have in there. For each output set, I can select all of the different types of output that I want to generate. So very simple, and if I go back to QuarkXPress, I can show you how simple that is. I have these output settings here, and if I print, I generate that particular type of output. I have my output set here, and if I print that, I will generate all of the different outputs that are specified inside of that set. If I click Edit, we go to the definition of that output set, and like I said, there you have these general parameters, including the priority, for example, and I have the output settings that are used. I can define the order between them. That might be important in some workflows, but also I can add or remove as many of them as I want. Okay, so that was an easy one, and let me go back here and look at the rest of these things. So, can I automate this? Of course, what we've done so far was MadeToPrint standard, and in MadeToPrint standard, you always have manual processing. Someone needs to open a QuarkXPress document in QuarkXPress, and then needs to open up this MadeToPrint panel and say print, and then that is output using the output settings or the output set that was created in MadeToPrint. But it's always a manual process. However, there is also a version of MadeToPrint that is called MadeToPrint Auto, and in MadeToPrint Auto, we use hot folders, and there can be an integration with automation systems such as Focus Switch. Hot folders, how? Well, by setting up for a specific input and output folder what action is going to be done. And you can see that here I've specified a hot folder, and what I've set up is that for that particular hot folder, a number of external applications can be run before a document is opened. Then the document is actually opened, and in this case an output set is used. So that will generate multiple types of output files, and then I have a way to start external applications once the document is closed. And of course, this already allows me quite a bit of flexibility on the automation side. It means, for example, that I could generate output from the QuarkXPress document and then use a piece of FTP software, just to name one example, that picks up the generated PDF document and moves it to a specific FTP server so that it can be printed. That's just one example. But MadeToPrint Auto will also integrate into something like Switch, and there in Switch, of course, you can build much more elaborate flows once the output has been generated by MadeToPrint. How does that work? It works in a very, very simple way. I go back to MadeToPrint. I go to Auto, which is the automation part of the process. You can already see some details for the hot folder setup that I have created for this demo. And basically, you can create as many hot folder setups as you want. And I simply click on Edit. In Edit, I have a name for my hot folder setup, and again, a priority. And then I have this action where I can choose an individual output setting. So now my hot folder will generate high-res PDFX4 documents. Now it will generate both the PDFX4 output and EPS output. Or if my output set contains 5 different output formats, it will generate output for all 5 of them. So it's, again, pretty straightforward. And then in the folder setting for that particular hot folder setup, you define the input folder. That's the folder that will be watched by MadeToPrint. And then you define the output folder, which is the one where by default output will be generated. But of course, we've seen that in the output setting, you can define very elaborate other locations where these files might be generated, and those will of course be honored in here. You can choose whether you want to delete the input file or not, and that may be important in environments like if you integrate into Switch or to some other automation solution. You have to see what that application expects you to do, but MadeToPrint can do both. And that if there is an error, you can define where error output is generated as well. And for this, you can generate as many of these hot folder setups as you want. I can simply add a new one, and under action specify which output I want, and under folders I even have a turbo setting, and there I simply select an output folder and it will automatically create all of the other files needed. So if I say that I want to generate EPS files, for example, I simply make a base folder, and then the turbo mode will automatically create in, out, and error folders in there, put them in the UI for MadeToPrint, and I'm basically all set up. And then here I could, of course, go back, give that a proper name, output EPS, and for action in that case, I probably want to select the EPS output setting. So setting up a hot folder is very simple, and once you've set up a hot folder in MadeToPrint Auto, then you can start these hot folders, and from that point on, each time a file appears in that input folder or in an input folder, then it is picked up automatically. The QuarkXPress file is opened in QuarkXPress, and output is generated for that. So that's MadeToPrint Auto and a way to automate this, this whole process. However, you can take it one step further. I already mentioned that MadeToPrint can be integrated into automation systems such as FileTrain or Switch from Enfocus, or it could be integrated into a scripted environment with this hot folder setup. But it also integrates into editorial systems. And when we're talking about QuarkXPress, of course, we're talking about Quark publishing platform, and MadeToPrint has an integration into that platform. So the way that would work, and this is a very simplified diagram with one particular example, but for example, I could say in my Quark publishing platform, there is a change. Someone marks a particular project as finished or ready for production, or however that is set up in your system. That change can trigger MadeToPrint integrated into Quark publishing platform, trigger MadeToPrint to generate output, again in the same way we've seen so far. So you can select all of the same options with output settings or groups of output settings. And once that output has been created, information can go back into the Quark publishing platform, and that information could be actual files, but it could also be simply an update of the status. So someone sets a file to ready for production, MadeToPrint takes over and generates all of the output in specific locations, and then it updates the status of that particular file in the Quark publishing platform to production files generated, or whatever you want to call that status. So it integrates into the system, and at that point, the user doesn't need to do anything. They simply work within a Quark publishing platform, and depending on the status of a file, everything will happen automatically in the background. So of course, that's if you want the most powerful way of working, where what the user needs to do is minimized, it is all integrated into the editorial system. Now, what I haven't mentioned, but I think you were able to see while I was talking, but I think it's important enough to highlight that very quickly before we conclude here, is that each of these output settings and output sets and so on, you can of course exchange those with other people. So I can build something, and then I can give those settings to someone else. I can also duplicate them here, and so on. So let me go back to my presentation. I'll go back to questions in a second. So if you have any last questions that have not been answered yet, then please provide those in the GoToWebinar interface. And let me just put this slide up. All of the product information for MadeToPrint is, of course, on the Axio or 4P's websites. There you can also download a trial version, and those trial versions are fully functional but limited in time. When you download a trial version, what is important to know is that you will always get a combination of MadeToPrint Manual and MadeToPrint Auto. So if you download something from the Axio or the 4P's website and you go to MadeToPrint in QuarkXPress, then you will always have the standard and auto capabilities, and you can try both. Of course, if you're interested, then you will need to buy a license to continue to use it, and that license will either be a standard license where you have to click the button to make things happen, or it could be an auto license or the integration with Quark publishing platform, but that is dependent on the license that you buy. Of course, if you have further questions, you can reach us at info@exio.com or info@4piece.com. You also have my email address on that slide again. Feel free to send me a brief email with your question, and then I can send it to the right person, or you'll get an immediate answer from me. So let me see if there are any questions that were asked that were not answered yet. I think most of the questions were actually answered. What you need to generate EPS files? Well, you need to create an output setting with EPS as the selected file format. That's basically what I did in this example setting that we had here. So if I go to Edit here, you will have to define an EPS output style in QuarkXPress, and then select that here, and you can set all of the other options that you want in this particular case. So it's not very different than selecting a PDF output setting. And then there is a question for page numbers to output selected pages. I'm actually not sure of that myself. Karina, can you maybe comment on that? I will unmute you for that. I know that you can specify the page numbers. So if I go to where did that setting go? So if I take this one and I go to here, page range, is this the regular system where I can say 10 to 20, for example, or is there anything specific that I can do that is special to MadeToPrint?
No, actually that's just page range, like you can enter it in QuarkXPress.
In QuarkXPress, perfectly. So anything that will work in QuarkXPress will also work in here then. Yeah, perfect. Thank you, René. Let me see if there are any other questions. One of the other questions, of course, that always comes is what are the other supported applications for MadeToPrint? I actually answered that a little bit in my presentation, but I glanced over it because this is about QuarkXPress. But here you have the full list of applications that are supported by MadeToPrint. If you go to the website, the Exio website, and you go to downloads, then you will see the full list of all of the different versions that are supported, and you'll need to download the right MadeToPrint version for your version of QuarkXPress or InDesign or Illustrator that you have. Okay, I think that was the last question that I can see that was not answered. If questions come up afterwards, or you want help with using the demo download, or you have specific questions for your configuration, don't hesitate and get in contact with us. And then the only thing that I still need to do is thank you very much for joining this webinar. It was good to have so many of you here. I hope that you download the trial version and give that a go and let us know how that worked out. As I promised in the beginning, the recording of this webinar and the actual presentation will be posted online. All of you who were registered for the webinar will get that automatically. You'll get an email with the web page where you can view the recording again, or where you can download the presentation. Thank you very much for joining, and I am sure I will see many of you for a future webinar. If there is anything that you would like us to cover in such a future webinar, don't hesitate to make that known as well. We are always interested in knowing what else we could tell you about with these applications, whether it is from Axio or any of the other vendors that we work with here at 4Ps. Just let us know and we can set something up. Thank you very much and have a great rest of the day.